Come on. Fight!
Hey, I freaking love Street Fighter! Autograph your spleen for me?
Hello everyone, Coma Jordan here. You know, two things that are great to eat by themselves that I love when put together are chocolate and peanut butter, which when put together make junk food like Reese's, which is a candy that I always come back to. The video game equivalent of this is definitely the Marvel vs. Capcom series. While both these companies have contrasting differences, particularly in what media they're a part of, both Marvel and Capcom have both maintained relevance in the eyes of the mainstream public. Whether that be Marvel with the comics, movies, cartoons, and even video games, or Capcom with their no shortage of popular franchises like Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, or Devil May Cry. Not to mention both characters having a long line of memorable characters, so seeing that Marvel and Capcom have made several games crossing over with each other was bound to be a huge treat. There's something about seeing Phoenix Wright from the Ace Attorney series put Dr. Doom up for court, or even the sight of seeing Ryu and Cyclops shake hands was a huge deal to me. Not to mention behind it was a very fun and fast-paced 2v2 or 3v3 fighter, with a lot of flair and personality on display. It was enough to make me excited for any match, whether it be from me or just watching other people play. So today we'll be going down each game in the Versus series from its origins to its current state today, and we'll see how it all holds up. Starting off with Children of the Atom, which was released in arcades in December of 1984 in Japan and in America and Europe the following year. While not technically a Versus game due to not having any Capcom characters besides Akuma, it is still important to the history of MVC as it helped cement Marvel's relationship with Capcom into making more fighting games. While this isn't Capcom's first Marvel game, that being the Punisher beat-em-up title, it is still the first of the MVC legacy since it is a fighting game. The story is seemingly based on the Fatal Attractions comic storyline, which follows Magneto, who aims to unleash an electromagnetic pulse on the Earth to bring a dark age to any non-mutants there, to which the X-Men have to stop him, or if you're playing as any of the villains, to gain something from Magneto for their own purposes. The roster consists of 6 of the X-Men, those being Wolverine, Storm, Cyclops, Colossus, Psylocke, and Iceman. Alongside them are 4 villains, Omega Red, a Sentinel, Silver Samurai, and Spiral. Oh, and Akuma from Street Fighter as a secret character, because of course he is. While this roster is pretty small with only 11 characters total, it is understandable due to the fact that they had to make new sprites and movesets for each character. Not to mention with all sprites being well animated and stylized, the gameplay is pretty unique despite being 1v1. The gameplay is fast-paced, though nothing compared to the turbo modes in later games, with flashy supers with multiple for each character, stage hazards, super jumps, and an exclusive feature called an X ability which allows the player to boost stats, use unique attacks, or escape from throws. There are also 2 bosses in the arcade mode, Juggernaut as the sub-boss and Magneto as the final boss, which I'll be honest, after seeing Magneto as a regular playable character from the games after this one, I was caught really off guard. Beating Magneto results in honestly pretty bland endings, being either, you beat Magneto X-Man, now back to your normal life, or you beat Magneto villain, now back to your normal life. Pretty much nothing really happens beyond the bare minimum, though not that it takes away from the game anyways. While sales or profits aren't entirely known, I'd imagine this game had a massive audience. This game released in the mid-90s, a time where the X-Men dominated the comics along with their successful cartoon series, and surprise surprise, this game was made by Capcom, who only a few years prior released Street Fighter 2, one of the best fighting games in the world, and only a few months before this game, they would release Darkstalkers, the Night Warriors, both really great successes in terms of Capcom fighting games. So when you combine X-Men's popularity with Capcom's current boom in fighting games, it was a recipe for success. The only people who I could say hated this game was IGN, but since when do their reviews on games matter? X-Men Children of the Atom is a solid game with its gameplay and presentation, but nothing that is as memorable compared to what came after, and trust me, that's not a bad thing. Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems was released in arcades in 1995 and on consoles in 1997. The story is based on the Infinity Gauntlet storyline in the comics, or as you all know, the Infinity War in the MCU, following Thanos, who wants the Infinity Gems for nefarious purposes, and the heroes have to stop him. This time the roster is more of a general Marvel roster, consisting of Hulk, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Wolverine, Psylocke, Captain America, Magneto, Juggernaut, and 2 fairly obscure characters, Blackheart and Shimmer Garage. That's one of the things about the Versus series, is how they were able to grab some of the most random or obscure characters and put them into these games. There are also 3 secret playable characters you could use by inputting special codes, those being the 2 bosses, Thanos and Dr. Doom, and Anita from Darkstalkers. While the bosses act like playable characters, Anita is more of an Easter egg as she steals moves from Donovan and Akuma. The gameplay is fairly similar to Children of the Atom, but without the stage hazards or X abilities. Instead, we have the gimmick being the Infinity Gems, which grants special abilities when found and activated. Power increases your attack, time increases your speed, soul grants back your health, space gives you armor, reality summons projectiles, and mind charges up your supers. This really helps spice up the gameplay with more variety that it would later be used in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. The endings again are fairly boring, depicting what the heroes did after they defeated Thanos. But if you were playing as any of the villains, the game would depict what would happen after they got the gems for themselves. Overall, a more fun improvement over Children of the Atom gameplay-wise, and the sprite work is still really well made, but there's nothing too amazing that I would put it above any of the later Versus titles. Okay, so we finished what started Capcom's relationship with Marvel into fighting games. Now let's get to an actual crossover. X-Men vs. Street Fighter was released in arcades in 1996 and in consoles in 1997 and 1998. The story follows the X-Men and the World Warriors coming together to take down Apocalypse. Basic but cool. This roster has 17 characters, 8 for the X-Men and 9 for Street Fighter. With the X-Men, it's more copy-pasted from Children of the Atom, including Juggernaut, Storm, Wolverine, Magneto, and Cyclops, with the additions of Rogue, Gambit, and Sabretooth. One notable thing about Rogue is how one of her attacks involves her mutant ability to steal powers, which applies to everyone in the roster, even the Street Fighter characters. And then Street Fighter's characters come from the Alpha games, with Ryu, Ken, Cammy, Charlie, Chun-Li, Zangief, Dalsum, M. Bison, and Akuma. What's funny about Cammy being in the game is how her design was completely original to this game, but afterwards it became her alpha costume known as the Killer Bee. You once again have a standard arcade ladder where the main boss is Apocalypse, who isn't player sized so you can't play as him, as he's instead a giant boss that fills up the entire screen. With the main difference being is that at the end of the ladder you have a one-on-one standoff between you and your partner. While the endings again don't do anything crazy, one ending really stands out to me. In Ken's ending, we see him with his son Mel, and this is Mel's first appearance in the game, as he would later appear in games like Street Fighter 3, 4, and 5. Really weird how two things that are part of Street Fighter lore were first part of a crossover game. The biggest addition made to the gameplay is the tag and assist mechanic. Tagging allows you to switch out your second character and use them to fight, and assists briefly bring out your character for an attack. Very revolutionary considering how it became a mainstay for the series' future. This game showed that Marvel and Capcom could do the impossible. Seeing the X-Men fight alongside the famous Street Fighters was something completely unheard of outside of Easter egg, but having them actually interacting and fighting each other absolutely blew people away. In fact, the idea that this was a crossover team-up game in the first place is what laid the groundwork for Marvel and Capcom's library of characters to cross over later. With faster and crazier gameplay combined with the past game's vibrant art style really showed what was to come from the Versus series. Next is Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. While still a good Versus game, it didn't particularly bring that much to the table. Released in the arcades in 1996, the game follows pretty much the same story as X-Men vs. Street Fighter. Just fight Apocalypse, but with more Marvel characters. This one probably has the weakest roster so far with 17 characters. Zangief, Bison, Dalsum, Akuma, Chun-Li, Ken, Ryu, Cyclops, Spider-Man, Captain America, Shuma-Gorath, Wolverine, Hulk, Blackheart, Omega Red, and 2 newcomers, Sakura and Dan Hibiki. You can immediately see the issue that the main roster has no new characters that are brand new and are all just reused from other games. While the Versus series does reuse assets a lot, there's nothing new to add variety to what we've already seen. There are secret characters that are pretty much palette swaps but are still worth noting, including US Agent, Mephisto, Armored Spider-Man, Mech Zangief, Dark Sakura, and Shadow. Also, on the Japanese version, they give you the real-life celebrity comedian Norimaru, which was used to help this game appeal to Japan. Yeah, that was a thing. The gameplay is also unchanged from X-Men vs. Street Fighter. Still far from bad, but it's still the same format. The only main addition to the arcade ladder is that the final boss is Cyber Akuma, while Apocalypse is just a sub-boss. Apologies if this segment is significantly shorter than the other ones, but there isn't that much worth talking about. Because overall, while the roster technically has more variety than X-Men vs. Street Fighter, you can't deny that this is one of the more laser entries in the Versus series, considering the reused assets from prior games. Though, we wouldn't be stuck like this for too long, as 2 years later, we would be introduced to a brand new title. After 4 entries, we are finally at the first Marvel vs. Capcom game, Clash of the Superheroes. Released in arcades in 1998, this game pretty much has no story, but that isn't really the main attraction as now the main part of the game is how varied the roster is. This time the roster has 18 characters, with returning characters Chun-Li, Ryu, Zangief, Spider-Man, Captain America, Hulk, Gambit, and Wolverine, with brand new additions from the Capcom side including Morgan from Darkstalkers, Captain Commando, Mega Man, Strider Hiryu, Jin Sao Tome from Cyberbot's Full Metal Madness, and the 2 Marvel characters Venom and War Machine. It's also worth mentioning that this game has a ton of secret characters, while most being palette swaps have completely different stats. These include Roll from Mega Man, Lilith from Darkstalkers, Shadow Lady for Chun-Li, Hyper Venom, Gold War Machine, and Orange Hulk. You also get a random selection of 20 characters to act as assists with 2 extra secret characters. From the Capcom side, we have Unknown Soldier from Forgotten Worlds, Lou from 3 Wonders, Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, Saki from Quiz no Nairo Dreams, Tonpu from Strider, Princess Devilot from Cyberbots, Anita from Darkstalkers, Pure and Fur from Quiz Adventure, and Michelle Hart from Legendary Wings. And from the Marvel side, we have Thor, Cyclops, Magneto, Storm, Jubilee, Rogue, Psylocke, Juggernaut, Iceman, Colossus, and US Agent, with the secret assists being Shadow and Sentinel. While the arcade mode is pretty standard, the boss is brand new, Onslaught from the X-Men, which was honestly one of the more challenging bosses of the series with high damage and acting very aggressively. The gameplay, like the last two games, are 2v2 tag based but with three differences. First, variable assists have been replaced with the random pool of selectable characters as mentioned before, with a limited amount of uses so they don't become abusable. Secondly is the variable cross, where when executed will allow you to summon both your characters to fight simultaneously for a limited amount of time. And finally are crossover combinations, where for multiple super meters you can combine your supers between your two characters which create massive damage. All of these definitely help to spice up the gameplay and add more variety to how everyone plays. MVC1 as the first entry in the Marvel vs. Capcom franchise specifically still holds up in a lot of ways, from its roster to its gameplay to its presentation, and from here, the series could only move up. It's no surprise that this game is one of the biggest fighting game hits in history. This game decides to go all in with its roster and presentation. You go to the character select screen and you are immediately hit with its jazzy energy with one little song.
Select your heroes.
The roster decided to go Smash Ultimate on us and brought pretty much everyone from the past games back, along with a ton of newcomers, making for 56 total characters. And now with the game being 3v3, this makes for 50,616 combinations. Damn! The newcomers consist of Felicia from Darkstalkers, Boneclaw Wolverine, Thanos and Doctor Doom from Marvel Superheroes, Guile from Street Fighter, BB Hood from Darkstalkers, Meryl, Cable, Anna Karis from Darkstalkers, Hayato from Star Gladiator, Tronbon from Mega Man Legends, Jill Valentine from Resident Evil, Servbot from Mega Man Legends, and Roll, who isn't a palette swap this time but still sucks ass. And there are three completely original characters for the Capcom side: Ruby Hart, a pirate who apparently is a Darkstalkers reject, a Mingo, a giant cactus creature, and Sansan, who is technically a reference to the old Capcom arcade game Sansan. But aside from Sansan, without context, it would lead people to believe to ask, what do these characters have to do with Capcom? Not trying to show shade at these characters though, I'd take a Mingo over Marrow any day. The game is now 3v3, but without the random assist characters. In fact, everyone on the roster has 3 selectable assists, which could be used to match your style when fighting. I haven't touched on the stages in prior games since they weren't really worth noting, but I really dig the 3D backgrounds of the 2D characters' aesthetic. It reminds me of how some old cartoons like Popeye would be animated on a rotograph with 3D backgrounds. Though I have to ask, what is the theme considering pretty much all of these have nothing to do with Marvel or Capcom? The final boss is actually the most difficult boss in the entire franchise, an original character called Abyss. Not only does he have so many opportunities to do massive damage, but he has 3 different phases. First, as a giant knight with weapons he pulls out of his horns to create spears. Second is a green man-thing with annoying arm cannons and bubbles to capture you. And finally, a giant orange beast who wants to devour you. This leads to the ending where after you beat him, everyone rides upon the pirate ship where everyone celebrates, and Ruby Hart with the orb that belonged to Abyss throws it in the ocean. I'll be real, this is one of my favorite video games of all time. With no shortage of replayability and variety, the catchy and memorable OST, and the refinement of gameplay from everything the Versus team has learned from before, it is no surprise that this became a household name in the fighting game community. After the success of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you would think that MVC3 would be inevitable back then, right? Well, not exactly. Due to the decline of 2D fighting games in the 2000s, we wouldn't see the return of Marvel vs. Capcom until 2011. In February of that year, we would see the return of the series with Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Fate of Two Worlds. This game acts kind of like a reboot with a shift to 3D, with a comic art style that completely ignores the stories of the past games. The story, which can be found in the official animated shorts and comics, is that Galactus decides to bring together both the Marvel and Capcom worlds so he can devour both of them, and it's up to the heroes in order to stop him. Due to the change to 3D, and the new engine, the roster was trimmed down in the base game to 36 characters, with several returning characters from the last game. Returners consist of Doctor Doom, Akuma, Tronbon, Chun-Li, Ryu, Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Storm, Wolverine, Magneto, Morrigan, Felicia, Sentinel, and Hulk. The newcomers consist of Wesker, Chris Redfield, Dormammu, Zero, Super Skrull, MODOK, Taskmaster, Sea Viper, Thor, Trish, Dante, Amaterasu, Spencer, Beautiful Joe, Deadpool, Hisenko, X-23, Phoenix, Arthur, Mike Hagar, and She-Hulk. Along with that, Fate of Two Worlds sold Shumagorath and Resident Evil 5 Jill as DLC. The game was later expanded into Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, with 12 additional characters, with the only returning character being Strider. The 11 newcomers include Nemesis, Firebrand, Phoenix Wright, Frank West, Virgil, Nova, Ghost Rider, Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, Iron Fist, and Rocket Raccoon. The reason why this game needed this version is originally, these 12 characters were meant to be DLC, but due to the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, Capcom had to release this version to make the game more affordable. While it was a shame tons of past characters got lost, we still had some really cool characters. The gameplay has also been overhauled with completely changed button inputs and more reliant on complex combos. One of the best additions is how level 3 supers have become more cinematic. While some characters don't get any level 3 supers, a lot of characters like Doctor Doom, Dante, Virgil, or Ghost Rider have crazy supers that perfectly show off the characters' personalities. Doctor Doom puts the opponent in a giant blender while he sits back and watches them suffer. Nemesis turns into his final form from the end of Resident Evil 3 and grabs you and squirts acid. And Deadpool is all up in your face and has a super where he smacks you with the game's health bars and meters, representing how he breaks the fourth wall. But one unique feature to MVC3 is the X Factor, which you can use to regain health, amplify damage, or save you from near death, which all depends on how many teammates are still alive on your team when you activate it. So let's say if you only have one character left and you use it, you're able to make a comeback with enough life and damage to eliminate an entire team. However, this game came with one unbalanced character when used right.
It can't control it!
If Phoenix is eliminated with her super meter at max, she is reborn as Dark Phoenix. Not only does she have high damage, but her super meter refills fast, which if you combine it with X Factor will amplify her power even more. Dark Phoenix was infamous in the MVC community for being flat out unfair in competitive play, and it's easy to see why. Moving on to something a bit more positive, this was the first game in the series to have full dialogue performances for every character. Whether that be interacting with rivals before the fight starts, or their winning animation when the fight is over. And everyone on the voice team does a really good job, especially since mostly everyone comes from a past Marvel project or a Capcom game. And speaking of the characters, this game gave us the introduction of completely different costumes, not just recolors, but fully created models for each member of the cast, and they look really good and are great ways to reference something in the character's history. Moving on from that, we have the stages, which I thought were pretty good, with all stages based on a Marvel or Capcom property, like an Umbrella Lab from Resident Evil, islands based on Ghosts and Goblins, or a parade with giant inflatable Marvel and Capcom characters. My favorite is definitely the Days of Future Past stage. Days of Future Past is one of my favorite Marvel plotlines, and here it adapts the iconic Wanted poster featuring several cut characters from MVC2, with classic Mega Man's fate currently unknown. When the game released on home consoles, it received some pretty good modes. Arcade mode, mission mode where you could test your skills to perform combos, training, online, and exclusive to Ultimate 3, Heroes and Heralds. You pick a side of Heroes or Heralds and fight in battles with the other side, where you can receive cards based on characters not in the game. I had a lot of fun with this mode specifically. Arcade mode is mainly the same with the boss being Galactus, but he's one of the more easier bosses given he doesn't have a change in attack pattern, no matter what difficulty you're on. And speaking of Galactus, the arcade mode also comes with a secret, which lets you play as Galactus with his own arcade ladder, where you have access to all of his moves with the press of a button, along with his own ending where he destroys both worlds. And the endings are honestly the best in the whole series. Everyone gets 2 pages displaying what they did after beating Galactus, and admittedly they're kind of hit or miss, with some not even having an actual crossover like Spider-Man or Akuma's, but some of them do have some fun with it. Dante takes a job from Mephisto, Deadpool having a party with some other heroes, or Phoenix Wright defending Galactus in court. This game is extremely close to MVC2 in terms of which one is my favorite. This game brought in so much personality to the characters and art style, along with some great gameplay. So if you had to choose between 2 or 3, I'd say it's best to go with your gut. However, it took 6 more years until we see the next game, and let's say the reaction was a bit lukewarm. In late 2016, we would see a trailer for a new Marvel vs. Capcom game, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, with the reveal of new characters Captain Marvel and surprise pick Mega Man X. People were excited. However, the more the game was shown off, the more it looked like a step back. The game was released in 2017 on consoles only. The modes included arcade mode, versus mode, story mode, online, and missions. With even less characters than vanilla MVC3, the roster consists of 30 characters, with only 5 of them being new, and most of the returning characters come directly from the last game. Heck, the only character who didn't get into Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was Thanos. The new characters consist of Mega Man X, Ultron, Gamora, Captain Marvel, and Jeddah. The most fatal flaw with the roster is the lack of any X-Men characters or Fox characters. Wolverine, Doctor Doom, Magneto, all of them are gone despite the fact that the Versus game started with them. The explanation for this is obvious, and no, it's not because of functions versus functions. By this time, Disney owned most of Marvel and wanted to make the roster tie into the MCU, with Infinity War coming out the following year. But one of my main problems with the characters who did return besides, why is Spencer still here, is most of them are just horrifying. Dante and Captain America just look creepy, and when the game released the demo, Chun-Li looked like this. According to Matt McMuscle's video of what happened, which I will link in the description if you want to know the full story, the team was reportedly left with an extremely reduced budget, which led to the veterans just being reused model from MVC3, which led to them looking completely weird in this bland MCU-ish style. Meanwhile, the newcomers like X or Ultron look really good since they had to create new models for them. Also, only a month or two after launch, they released a $30 pass for DLC, which contained 6 characters: Sigma, Monster Hunter, Winter Soldier, Black Widow, Venom, and Black Panther. Because if this game was going to be more Marvel biased, they would have 4 Marvel and 2 Capcom. The gameplay was reduced to 2v2 again, with the Infinity Stones reminiscent of Marvel superheroes completely replacing the 3rd tag character. You have a choice between 6 Infinity Stones, each with a normal ability, and a unique stage shift called an Infinity Surge, which enables another ability for a limited amount of time. Reality gives you a red projectile, and the Infinity Surge brings out several elemental attacks to be used automatically. Space drags your opponent towards you with the Infinity Surge locking them in the box, which is used to reduce the amount of attacks they can do. Time allows you to teleport behind your opponent, and the Infinity Surge enables quick and easy combos. Power brings out a knockback attack, and the Infinity Surge powers up your attack. Soul has a drain attack, and the Infinity Surge brings out your other attack partner to be used simultaneously, and can be used to bring them back from the dead. And finally the Mind Stone, which could be used to grab an opponent into knockdown, and the Infinity Surge fills up your super meter extremely fast. Of all the problems this game has, this was a welcomed addition as it allowed for greater gameplay customization. Along with that, the gameplay has been more simplified, making supers and combos more easier to execute. This was actually my first game in the series when I was younger, and I could say this is really beginner friendly, though the stages got even worse than before. Due to the story mode, which I'll get to later, the stages had a good idea about fusing certain worlds together, like Volconda based on Monster Hunter or Wakanda, X-Guard based on Mega Man X and Asgard, or the Dark Kingdom based on the Dark Dimension from Marvel and the Makai from Darkstalkers. But not only are there fewer stages, but a good amount of them are nearly the same as the other. And speaking of the story mode, wow, this is bad. The story tries to be based on a NetherRealm story mode with cinematic cutscenes, but the models just don't work in this motion. The story is about Ultron from Marvel and Sigma from Mega Man X, $7.99 by the way, fusing to create Ultron Sigma and fusing the worlds together and spreading the Sigma virus, which infected most of the worlds. The heroes have to come together to collect the rest of the Infinity Stones, while Ultron Sigma already has the Space and Reality Stone. While there are some neat ideas here, the story just comes off like bad fanfiction. But that's an insult to fanfictions because at least those have a beginning. You start the story with the Marvel and Capcom heroes already friends and having friendly banter with each other, when the most interesting part of a crossover is seeing these characters interact for the first time. Sure, there was the MVC3 shorts and the ending of MVC2, but those were completely self-contained. Here, Infinite treats this world as separate, but didn't bother showing these characters meeting. And while there are some good interactions, some just amount to awkward dialogue.
Every prison's the same.
Yeah, done a lot of hard time, huh?
No. But I've put a lot of punks like you away.
And look into my eyes. What do you see?
You are guilty of many things, Succubus, but not of this.
I sense such desire in you. A fire.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
And spoilers, but during the final battle, Ultron Sigma evolves into Ultron Omega, and sorry, but this design looks just silly looking. But at least if you didn't like the story, the arcade mode must have something right.
Congratulations!
That's it?
I kid you not. There are no endings. Character-specific endings, something that was available in 1994 in Children of the Atom, is not present in this game released in 2017. While the reviews of the game range from okay to decent, this game was called out for being the black sheep of the series for its bare-bones content and limited roster. Along with sales selling below Capcom's expectations, this game flopped. But if one thing was worth salvaging about this game, is that the gameplay was the best it's ever been, and the newcomers were actually fun to play. And despite my overall issues, I still think the game is good, but nothing topping the prior two games. If you want to give it a try, go ahead, you'll have fun, but there is better stuff out there. Due to the failure of Infinite, it was no surprise another game wasn't attempted again. Disney is very protective of its properties and wanted success everywhere to match the MCU. And it's a shame because there's so many Marvel and Capcom characters that have grown in popularity for the past few years. Leon Kennedy, Miles Morales, Jamie, Ms. Marvel. But sadly, Marvel and Capcom had to play it safe considering how much money they could lose releasing these games. It took them years later in 2024 for Capcom to release the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, bringing in every single retro game along with the Punisher beat-em-up game in one big collection. And hey, with Capcom's recent successes and Marvel's recent success with video games like Spider-Man and Marvel Rivals, that will mean that we'll get a new game, right? Okay, well, looks like Arc System Works is working with Marvel to make their own fighting game, along with it being 4v4 tag-based and bringing back the X-Men and Doctor Doom, and it looks really cool. Crap. Well, I guess that's just how it goes. Will Capcom team up with Marvel ever again? Well, today that seems unlikely, but as long as people keep supporting the legacy of Marvel vs. Capcom, we can only hope that one day we could see that epic handshake again. And hey, with the power of the free MVC2 movement, we were lucky to just even get that collection, so I think it's best that we're grateful for what we have, and enjoy what comes up in the near future, because honestly, the future looks bright. So when's Marvel? Now's Marvel. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going completely unscripted for this, but thank you. At the time of this recording, we reached 55 subscribers. That might not sound that big, but to me, it means a lot. I had a lot of anxiety going into this channel, and seeing my channel rise this far really makes me happy. If you want to support me, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and make sure to hit the bell, and make sure to check me out on Patreon. I really do appreciate the support, so thank you.